Okay, welcome to part 2 of our video on how to turn yourself into a zombie. So where we left off, we have first we made a rough selection of ourselves, and then we kind of went and cleaned up that selection. So you can see the two versions I have here. Here's my original when I just used my selection tool and added a mask, and then here's after I went around and kind of cleaned things up. So you can see the other thing that I had done, these are two separate projects. This one I kind of liquefied things a little bit more. That's where in my case, I made the eyes bigger, the nose a little smaller, and kind of tilted the nose up and kind of pulled the ears out. So you can see a little bit of differences between those two as I kind of liquefied those two different times. So that's kind of what we've done so far. We created a document, we put our picture on there, we liquefied it, and then we added the mask, and now you can see I've cleaned up the mask. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So the next step, what I want to do now is I would like to go ahead and start adding things to this project. So again, I'm going to look at this before I do anything else, and what I want to do is I would like to just kind of make this a little bit bigger, I'm thinking. So what I want to do, I want to just transform myself a little bit bigger even yet. And you can kind of be the judge of how big yours should be. I'm holding shift while I'm dragging the corner once again. I'm just kind of making sure this version really kind of fills what I want it to. Because I would like to focus mostly on the face, a little bit on the shirt, maybe with some like blood or like rips or something in there, just to kind of make it match the rest of the photo, but realistically the face is where we're going to be doing most of our work. So here it is ready to work on. The next thing you're going to need to do is get from the internet pictures of things that you might want to add. Things like scabs, scars, stitches, open like blood, things like that. You have to be careful about what you Google here. I'm not trying to turn this into like a biology lesson, so for me, I Googled like zombie scar or something like that, so that instead of getting like medical things that you'd get in a biology class where some of you may lose your lunch, I'm getting all things that were like costume, makeup type things. Just, kind of be cautious with that if you choose. So what I'm going to do now is I found some pictures that I'm going to use for this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in just some scars. So I'm going to drag this picture directly on here. I'm going to press enter to place it, and then I'm going to right click and rasterize it. Now this image is actually on here. So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to throw that on the side. This is going to be just kind of like actually like a backup for us. So I'm going to call that like backup scars. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a very, very rough selection with my lasso. And the key is I just don't want to touch the scars. So let's say I want this one. There we go. So I've made my rough selection. I'm going to copy that. And now I'm going to paste that. The reason I did that, now it put that scar into its own brand new layer. So I still have all the backups, but I have this one in its own layer. So I'm going to call this one scar. Alright, now I'm going to move that over to my face, and it's not going to look like much yet, but as you play with blending modes, because this one happens to be on a white background, I know that I can easily kind of get rid of the rest of that. So now I'm just left with the scar. Next thing I got to do is I got to make some decisions. Where is this thing going to be placed? How big should it be? Should I rotate this thing? And then I can also warp it as well. So let's kind of start playing around with that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do Command T to get my transform screen up. And I'm going to just kind of play around with different directions that this thing could face. I think the size is actually about good for me. So I'm just kind of playing around with like where this thing should be. I actually kind of like it on this side. And I may go back something like that. Maybe I'll kind of look like it's almost like wrapped around my eye. So here's what I'm going to do. I place this scar about where I want it, but I need to kind of curve that a little bit more, that scar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I'm still in the middle of transforming, I can just right click and go to warp. Now I'm going to need to zoom in to really get this right. So I'm zooming in on my screen here, and I'm going to just start grabbing this scar and kind of like changing it however I feel like I need to. And again, just trust your eyes here. Whatever you think looks right probably does. If you think it doesn't look right, it probably doesn't. So there we go. So let's see what that looks like now. So again, I'm contouring this to my skin to make it kind of look a little more realistic. Next thing I want to do is, it's a bit much right now. It still kind of looks like it's sitting on top of here, even with this blending mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask. And this mask right now, if you notice, is totally white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this. I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to paint black, but I want my opacity to be really low. I'd rather run over this a bunch of times. So I have mine set really, really low, like 11. Now the other thing I want is I probably want a really, really low hardness, because what I'm trying to do is I just want this to fade into my skin. I don't want it to have these abrupt edges here, or it's going to kind of look like it was just placed on top of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start running over these parts here, the edges more than the rest, and I'm just trying to kind of get rid of that rough edge. So you can kind of see now it's starting to fade in. It's looking more like there's like a bruise on my skin, and then that bruise is fading away like a natural bruise would. So I'm just running over these spots. Now you can adjust the opacity, you can run over this as many times as you need, you can change the size of your brush. All those things will certainly help. Alright, so again, I'm just kind of working my way around the edge here. I'm being careful not to hit the stitches because they wouldn't look like they were fading. So you just kind of, again, got to just use some common sense. If you're not doing stitches but you're doing something else, just kind of think through what you're doing. Think about what it would look like in real life and just work from there. So here's the other deal. Now I'm working zoomed in, but I also want to zoom out then and just kind of see how I'm doing. So I'm holding the Option, I'm zooming out. And there we go. So that one's starting to look a little more natural. Now one last little trick that I can do. I have the blending mode set to darken. You can see like I've hardly even painted any color in the mask. If we Option click on that, that's really all I did to the mask. I just painted that little bit there. So again, to get to this, just to see what I did, I held Option and clicked. And there we go. Alright, so next thing I can do, or the last thing really to this scar, is I'm just going to drop the opacity on that ever so slightly. I don't want to fade the stitches at all, but I just wanted to kind of blend that a little bit. So I just drop the opacity just that little bit, and sometimes that's going to work well, sometimes that may be unnecessary. Alright, well, let's add maybe one more thing here. Let's see how this guy goes. So I've just gotten a collection of pictures from the internet. Now again, this one's makeup, so don't be too grossed out here. I made sure to get makeup pictures from zombies, and you can almost kind of see the edge of the makeup here. So I'm going to once again rasterize this thing. I'm going to zoom out because I want to scale this thing much smaller. And also, when I was on Google, I made sure that all my images were large images. So when I was in Google Images, I made sure that the option for large images was selected. And I made sure I clicked on those images before I saved them. So there we go. I've resized this thing. Now I'm going to move this down to me. I'm going to put on a blending mode. I'm going to start playing with like where this thing could possibly work. I kind of like the cheek with that. I could do the forehead once again. You know, if I didn't have this scar here. And again, you can like turn things on and off too, so maybe I'll get rid of that scar and do this here. For now, let's try something like that. And once again, I'm going to transform this. I want to rotate this a little bit, I'm thinking. Something like that. And now I'm going to warp this as well. So I'm going to right click. Because I'm already in transform, I have the option to warp this thing. I'm going to zoom in. Just kind of place this thing exactly how I want it. So I'm going to kind of grab the edges of this. I'm going to grab the center, lower it down, and bring up the two ends. So again, I'm just kind of wrapping it around my face so that it matches the contours of my face. And the more you play, kind of the better this thing will start to look. So there we go. So that's starting to kind of match what I want. Now I don't need, and I'm not going to use this entire image here. This is just to kind of get me going. Alright, so let's try that. Now this blending mode still may not be the best here, so let's try some other ones. I actually kind of like that. I may end up going back to that and then just dropping the opacity because that one kind of looks nice. Let's run through some of these other options that I have here. And again, the more that you try, the better options you're going to find. Let's try an overlay on that. And again, that one's kind of good too. That one's sort of nasty. I'm going to go with multiply for now. And then I'm going to drop the opacity a little bit. And the mask is going to be crucial on this one. So what I'm going to do is I kind of have this where I want it. I'm just going to move it just that little bit. Alright, good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the mask to this, and at first I do want to work with a high opacity on my brush. So I'm going to set that back to 100%. I'm still, though, going to keep a very small hardness, but I'm going to increase the size. I'm just trying to rough this thing out. And I can also go back and paint with white if I decide I need more of this thing. So I'm definitely going to eliminate it from my eye. I don't want this thing to really be hitting my eye. Anywhere that it hangs over the picture, I'm going to need to eliminate. In my case, on my beard, because you wouldn't see this scab through the beard. And already it's kind of starting to look like it matches a little more. So I'm going to get rid of it on my nose. I'm going to assume that this thing's only affecting my cheek area. And now I'm going to drop the opacity way down. So I guess for right now I'm going to keep this larger brush. I'm just going to kind of start to paint away some of this image just to kind of get it to blend with the rest of my skin. And I'm starting to think maybe that's too much in some spots, so I'm going to go and paint some white to bring some of that back. I think I wanted a little bit more in this corner of my face, so there we go. I'm going to increase that opacity again. And one more time I'm going to play with the blending modes just to kind of see what my options are. I'm not really loving what I have. And you may end up just deciding later that this picture just doesn't work for what you were hoping for. See, overlay is nice, but I kind of have too much yellow there. I may come back to that one and do one more step. Soft light's actually kind of nice. Let's try that with 100% opacity. So not bad. It kind of blends a little too much. It's the same deal. On your project, you'll just kind of want to play around and just kind of figure out what works for you. So let's say you have a situation like I do where overlay works nice, but the yellow was too yellow. I'm going to use my sponge tool. It's in with the dodge and burn. So I'm going to hold down, it's the letter O. I'm going to go to the sponge, and I'm going to desaturate. That's going to remove color as I go. My flow, I'm going to go just a little bit lower. I'm going to make this brush bigger. And I'm going to just desaturate some of the color from this thing. Trying to remove some of that like bright yellow. In fact, I may even target that yellow color a little more. Because I want to get this texture, I want these colors, but I just don't want them to be so much. I may be targeting the wrong part there. Because I was on the mask, not on the picture. There we go, now it's really starting to work for me. So these changes will be subtle, but they're going to be dramatic when it's all done. So that kind of fits it in with the rest of the face. And there we go. So I got rid of a lot of that bright yellow, and it's starting to really blend nicely now. So a lot of this is just kind of trying different things to get it to work. So there was my sponge tool again. So I can use that to take away color, or I can add color. So I had it in mode desaturate, and that's what allowed me to get rid of color here. So let's zoom out and kind of see what I got. Now I think for this one I do definitely like that. I could even flip that over to the other cheek as well. So let's try that. Let's take this, we'll just duplicate this layer. And then I could move this thing, and I could transform. I'm going to flip. And I could just move this and kind of rotate it how I want. So now I have this thing on both my cheeks. Now that looks good, but if you notice these two scabs, these like scars, are exactly the same. So what I'm going to do, the last thing, I'm just going to take my clone stamp and clone pieces of this from here. And actually, you know what, because that color difference is so much, I think I'm going to use the healing. I'm going to clone from here. I'm going to just kind of put some of that. And again, I'm just going to try to get wrinkles from different spots to just make this as random as I can. So there we go. So now I've added that texture to both cheeks. Now realistically, I could even do that to my forehead as well. But I may want to add some more scars on top of this and different things going on. So again, now you kind of see how this works. I've added a bunch of different pictures. I've kind of blended things together. I've used masks to help me out. We learned this sponge tool that I can use to desaturate pictures. I can also use that if I need more color in a picture. So that's kind of how you add pieces to this. So that's the end of this part of the video.